Have you ever stopped to think if our modern school system is actually the best way to raise a capable, happy person? Or are we maybe just creating cogs for a machine designed to fit into society's rules? Well, today we're diving into a book that asked those exact same questions almost 300 years ago, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's groundbreaking work, Emile. Okay, this one sentence, it's the key to everything. You have to get this to get Rousseau. He believed that every child comes into the world pure, inherently good. And his radical idea was that society, with all its rules, its ambitions, its pressures, is what messes that all up. So that's the big question, right? If just sending a kid out into the world is what corrupts them, how in the world are you supposed to educate them to be a good person? And his answer was this wild one-on-one educational experiment. All right, let's get into his first major principle. For Rousseau, education wasn't about stuffing a kid's head with facts. Not at all. He saw it more as protecting the goodness that's already in there, kind of like how a gardener carefully tends to a young plant. You can see right here how this was a total rebellion against the education of his day. He looked at the strict, book-heavy system and saw the problem right there. He argued for an education led by the child, full of freedom and real-world experience, instead of one led by society, which was all about discipline and memorizing facts. And this leads to this beautiful idea he had. A tutor isn't like a sculptor, trying to force a child into some pre-decided shape. No, the tutor is a gardener. Their job is just to create the right environment, make sure there's sun and water, and pull out the weeds of society's bad habits, so the child can grow into who they were naturally meant to be. So how does this actually work in those super important early years? Well, Rousseau's method for kids from birth to age 12 was something he called negative education. And I know it sounds bad, but it's not what you think. So negative here doesn't mean neglect. It means you don't actively try to teach things like virtue with boring lectures. Instead, you play defense. You negate the bad stuff. You shield the kid from bad influences and just let the world be the teacher. If a child breaks a window, they get cold. That feeling of being cold is the lesson, not a 10-minute lecture from an adult. This story of the bean patch is the perfect example of his method in action. Forget a boring lesson on property rights. Rousseau sets up a whole situation where Emile feels the idea. By planting those beans, he feels ownership. And when they're gone, he feels that injustice, that violation. Only then does he learn that the gardener had worked that land first, and the abstract concept of property becomes totally real to him. Okay, so Emile has spent his childhood learning from real-world consequences. Now, at age 12, his brain is finally ready for reason. The focus of his education totally shifts. It's no longer just about protecting him, it's about actively learning useful skills. And the number one rule becomes, is this useful? Think about this. After 12 years, with not a single formal book, Rousseau decides Emile is finally ready to read one. Just one. He believed there was only one book out there that was practical and pure enough for this moment. And that one book, it was Robinson Crusoe. Yeah, the story about the guy who gets shipwrecked and has to survive all alone on an island using just his brain and his hands. So why this book? The key here is that he didn't pick it for the story. For Emile, this was a textbook for life. On that island, a rusty nail is worth more than a bag of gold. Why? Because you can use it. The whole point was to teach Emile that the true value of anything is based on its utility, not what society tells you it's worth. And this whole idea of being useful extends to work too. Rousseau was adamant that Emile had to learn a trade. He chose carpentry. And the reason is simple. You can lose your money, you can lose your status, but no one can ever take a skill away from you. It guarantees you can always take care of yourself, and it teaches you to respect hard work. All right, so Emile is now strong, he's rational, he's got practical skills. But what about his heart? How do you prepare him for the most dangerous place of all? Society. Well, this next stage is all about developing empathy. Just like with the bean patch, morality isn't something you learn from a lecture. To make Emile feel empathy, Rousseau doesn't just talk about being charitable. He takes him to see human suffering. They visit hospitals, they see poor people in villages. It's by seeing hardship with his own two eyes that Emile's natural compassion is awakened. He learns to feel for other people. Now, this is where Rousseau's philosophy gets really, really complicated for us today.
When it comes time to find a partner for Emile, he describes an education for a girl named Sophie, and it's the exact opposite of Emile's. Her education is all about making her an ideal wife and mother, dependent, agreeable, and focused on the home. It's a pretty jarring reminder of the 18th century mindset, and it stands in such stark contrast to all the freedom and independence he wanted for men.
So Emile and Sophie do get married and the educational project is done. But honestly, the real power of this book today isn't really the story. It's the tough questions it makes us ask about our own world right now. I mean, think about it. Rousseau was all about unstructured play, about kids having physical freedom. He'd probably look at a modern kid's calendar, jam-packed with classes and organized sports, and be absolutely horrified. He'd argue we're snuffing out the very natural curiosity he tried so hard to protect. And he'd definitely ask if our schools are creating genuine thinkers or just really good test takers. For Rousseau, learning was supposed to be this fire inside a kid, this natural curiosity that you just had to feed. It wasn't about memorizing a bunch of facts just to pass an exam.
And that all leads us to the final big question that kind of hangs in the air. Rousseau's experiment was with one kid in a totally isolated rural world. So how could we even begin to apply these radical ideas about freedom and nature and experience to the crazy, complex digital world our kids live in today? That right there is the challenge Emile still throws at us almost 3 centuries later.